Our friends and enemies on Earth are watching, and so are neighbors beyond this planet. We have much riding on tonight's success. If our enemies are improved this evening, then so are we. Today on the Comic Book Report, Marauders by Gerry Duggan Hardcover, Volume 2. Stick around and check it out. Ahoy, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're back on the high seas, closing out the back half of Gerry Duggan's Marauders. And before we dive into today's review, if you're interested in picking up your own copy or looking for other collected editions, I invite you to check out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you use my code, The Comic Book Report, at checkout, you can save $2 off of your order today. Please note, if you use my affiliate code or links for a purchase, I do get a small commission, but it's a great way to support our channel at no additional cost to you. Thank you for considering. Now let's dive in. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Gerry Duggan and illustrated primarily by Matteo Lolli and Stefano Caselli. The issues in this volume were first published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2020. The volume itself collects Marauders, issues 16 through 27, and King in Black Marauders, issue 1. And finally, this oversized hardcover comes in at 384 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that next oversized hardcover volume for Marauders. To my knowledge, this collects the last of Gerry Duggan's Marauders run. Really excited to have this in this format. This edition replicates the formatting from the volume 1. We have that nice kind of minimalist design aesthetic. We have the color blue. We have all the same logos, and I believe the Under the Dust Jacket hardback is just about identical, save where it says volume 2. And I really enjoy that. I love the look of these on the bookcase. I know that each of these different series that get this oversized treatment has their own color and logo, things like that. But I really love the look of them. I think they're simple but clean. Love this format. I know I reviewed Marauders Volume 1. I think I reviewed Excalibur, X-Force. There's a huge handful of this Dawn of X and, the different Krakoa era books I've reviewed in this format. Overall, this can be a really tricky era of X-Men and X-Men adjacent books to collect. I know I would have loved to see more omnibuses so far in this run, but every time they release one of these oversized hardcovers, it's definitely tempting. And knowing I can complete someone's run, or at least finish out the back half, I was really excited about it, and frankly, just excited to jump back into the world of Marauders. As you can see under the dust jacket, we have that cool Marauder skull design on the just field of blue here. Again, it matches the volume 1. I love seeing the bright blue, kind of baby sky blue hardback. It's just really fun. I love the theming of these editions again. Just a really great little collection here, no complaints. And after taking a look at this, I'll go ahead and do an up-close look at the binding. I believe this is sewn binding, but overall this is really well put together. I do enjoy seeing it here. I should say as well, for those just kind of diving in, the first volume of these hardcovers, I believe, collected through issue 12. Issues 13 through 15 are part of the X of Swords event, so it's of course collected in the X of Swords collection. It's not present in either of these Marauders hardcovers. I think that's a little unfortunate. I think the completionist in me would have loved to see them in these Marauders hardcovers for people that are just collecting the Marauders books to have the full run. But if you have X of Swords, rest assured you will have the complete Marauders run. I will say those issues heavily tie into the event themselves, and you could kind of read Volume 1 to this Volume 2 relatively seamlessly. There are, of course, some things you should know from X of Swords, but nothing too story or narrative critical compared to other series that you could read, like Excalibur, which directly has some repercussions from X of Swords. So I think that if you wanted to skip X of Swords, or maybe just do a brief synopsis, you should be fine just reading these Marauders hardcovers. If you're really only in it for Kate Pryde and the rest of her crew, you could follow all their exploits exploits here, and it's a lot of fun. I am happy to report that we do have the Hellfire Gala issue of Marauders included in this collection. You don't have the full Hellfire Gala event included, obviously. I did a review on that other hardcover some time ago, but you don't really need it. This story does kind of jump around a bit, but it's really fun, and like I said, I'm happy to have the rest of this run here. And just taking a quick moment, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel but are interested in more comic book reviews and other comic book miscellany, I definitely appreciate having you. Thank you, welcome aboard. Now back to our review. As far as the storyline for this volume goes, this picks up after the events of Volume 1 and X of Swords. Suffice it to say, Kate Pryde is back with a vengeance, the once Kitty Pryde, and she is after the Black King, Sebastian Shaw, for attempting to murder her. So the Volume 1 basically starts with Emma Frost and Kate Pryde confronting the Black King himself, and it's a really fun little exchange, and from there we kind of jump right back into our Marauders adventures. The cast and crew on the Marauders book, for the most part, is of course Kate Pryde with Lockheed. We have Bishop, we have Iceman, we have Pyro, and we also have characters like Callisto. I know Emma Frost and even Sebastian Shaw are pretty common characters that flow through this book as well. We of course have other appearances from different books or when they cross paths with different teams in the X-Men universe, things like that. But for the most part, that is our primary cast of Marauders for this book. And a lot of this book does take place on or around Madripoor, which is a city that's often frequented by Wolverine. It's known for being kind of a crime hotspot, sort of a ghetto in sort of Southeast Asia, and there's a lot of mutant politics that are happening on Madripoor during this era, and the Marauders are heavily invested to it, making port right outside of Madripoor for a lot of this run here at the back half. This run also has the restoration of the character Callisto, one of the previous Morlocks, who kind of joins the Marauders team in this volume. We have a ton of great interactions with her, and particularly the character of Storm, which I really liked. We also have an issue aboard the Marauder, like actual ship, where the entire Marauders crew is kind of gathered for dinner, and they're just sort of talking afterwards, and they're all talking about Storm, who's about to leave the team to go off on her own adventures, and everyone's reminiscing about some kind of gnarly story that involves Storm. So there's a lot of fun like flashbacks, camaraderie, and for me this is one of my favorite issues that deals with the team dynamic of this book and what makes these characters such a fun kind of team up collaboration. And honestly, I wish we had more issues like this throughout this Marauders run. I think it would have been great to just further ground these characters and their relationships with one another. I just thought that that was a almost perfect issue that I really just enjoyed. That we also have a King in Black tie-in issue. I thought this issue was kind of fun. It took some different twists and turns that I didn't expect. I don't think that you would have to read King in Black at all to enjoy this issue, and I'm super happy they decided to include it in this run here, as it's a really fun addition to this collection and pads it out a little bit more. There are some great fight sequences throughout this. I know one of the main antagonists or villains that the Marauders come up against during this back half of the run is actually the Reavers. They have a ton of fights with the mutant team here throughout Madripoor and things like that. A really fun dynamic that calls back to earlier X-Men eras. Again, overall, there were some really fun story bits. I think that there were episodic little standalone issues, but for the most part, these issues really did blend together fairly nicely. Whenever we did have those kind of episodic one-issue sort of standalone, I did like that because it felt like, oh, what are the Marauders up to now on their next big adventure? And that was a lot of fun, but I did like the kind of overarching, bigger storylines, like everything they did in Madripoor and battling the Verendi and the Reavers. I did really enjoy my time with this second volume of Marauders. I would say, though, this is still not my favorite, more modern X book. I know a lot of people are huge fans of this title, and I can see why. I think the seafaring nature of it, the sort of pirate X-Men book, I love following Kitty Pryde. I think a lot of people do as well. And the cast of characters is really eclectic and interesting as far as an X team goes, so I get why this has big fans. But to me, this has always been kind of a good not great title for me in this X-Men era. I will say, though, the art is some of the best I've seen. I love the kind of modern touches. The coloring is gorgeous, and it's just really lush and vibrant and energetic. I don't really know how to describe it, but the art itself has so much character. There's always a lot going on. I feel like the panels always have a ton happening, but it doesn't feel overcrowded. I think it's really easy to read, and it's just enjoyable. I don't know how to say it beyond that. I think the artist should absolutely be commended, and the world they create in Marauders is very immersive. I feel like this whole series has a very different tone than some of the X-Men books. Even visually, if it looks similar to other X-Men books, there is this kind of brighter feeling, a more hopeful bent to this whole Marauders run, at least in my mind. And it was fun. I liked that. It did have that quality that you feel like you're going on a swashbuckling adventure with this funny ragtag pirate crew. Another interesting moment of character development I saw in this volume that was in many ways unexpected for me but was kind of fun was that of Iceman. He was of course in volume 1 and has been a mainstay in the X-Men universe since the very beginning, being one of the founding X-Men members. But I think what they've done, especially in this arc, is really exploit his Omega level mutantness. We get to see him just go to another level of power. There's literally an issue where he grows to giant proportions, or there's times where he's almost cut in half and things like that, and is able to repair his ice form virtually unharmed. We have an issue actually where he's trying to test the upper limits of his power level, and he can't do it. He actually takes on frost giants that usually battle Thor and is able to beat them into submission, just showing his just unbelievable power level. And I think that this was a surprising turn for me in this volume, but it was a fun thing that they explored. I know that they did do this toward the end of the run, and I would say in addition to the Storm departing issue, as well as some of these things where Iceman's going off to test himself, the feeling at the end of Marauders is really one that this crew is sort of dismantling and moving on to bigger, better things. There's of course some alliances and still some setups that are still working and ongoing, but the Marauders team that we've gotten to know across these almost 30 issues is disbanding, will be no more, will be kind of splitting up, and I think that there is a level of closure in that. I do really think that this stuck its landing better for a comic book run compared to even a title like Excalibur. I know I reviewed that recently as well. I think that Marauders here definitely stuck the landing a little more, and it gave me a sense of closure and enough to tease that some of these other characters I want to follow are off doing their own separate things in future ongoing titles. And I did like that. I liked having that feeling that this run was kind of sunsetting, but that so many of these characters had a brighter future tomorrow in some kind of other ongoing adventures. They didn't wrap everything up in a perfectly pretty bow, but again, there was a good changing of the guard next chapter of these characters' lives that I think transitioned me out of this series quite nicely. So happy I got to read this volume too. Another sort of subplot and sometimes primary plot in this volume that I didn't really expect, but I found myself enjoying for the way it just kind of layered the narrative and made this whole storytelling feel that much more rich, was the intense kind of political angle in some of the issues. And when I say political, I mean the mutant politics surrounding Krakoa and the emergent mutant kind of faction here on Earth. We have, again, one of the Hellfire Gala issues, which really just changes the power balance of the mutants in this whole Marvel universe. So we get to see some before and after that. We know even before the events of Hellfire Gala, and I won't spoil some of that story's big stuff here. But suffice it to say, the mutants kind of set themselves up in a place of even greater superiority, arguably overstepping some of the other countries and even the United Nations in their sort of quest for dominance and rule. And I think that why I like this, again, before and after this moment, is that the emergence of the mutant nation has really upset the superpowers in the world as far as the global politics. And I like seeing how different countries and different factions adjust or deal with these developments. We see a lot of that come to a head again all throughout Madripoor and how the UN feels about mutant involvement in some of those cultures. And I just thought it was fascinating. Like I said, I think that it really adds a better layering. And I know that since almost the beginning of this franchise, the X-Men and the mutants in general have always faced a kind of discrimination, have always been downtrodden or treated with extreme prejudice. So the idea that now they're coming from a place of strength, victory, the upper hand, and they're still encountering some prejudice, and they're also just trying to dominate with their mutant excellence. I like seeing how a lot of those underpinnings and themes and ideas that we've seen explored throughout so many decades of X-Men history. I like seeing what they do in this current Krakoa era. And I think Marauders does a great job sort of adding to that ongoing discussion intertextually just throughout this book and the other adjacent X books. And we get a fuller picture of this era as we read more, and we see sort of the public response to the changing of the guard to this new, basically, mutant empire. And again, there's moments in here where it's really subtle, and there's moments where it comes to the head. Again, Madripoor being a big example of this, where we see sort of the powers that be try to tell them, hey, mutants can't interfere here, versus mutants are trying to interfere and build up infrastructure and liberate these people groups. And just seeing the navigation of all of that, again, just really fun, and an added layer that I think made this book feel even deeper than it could have been, and that is definitely a win for me with this title. I think in a time when all these mutants can use these Krakoan gates to travel anywhere in the world, or kind of anywhere these gates are planted, having one mutant who's usually able to pass through anything she wants not be able to, and set up the actual Marauders series where she physically has to sail or travel to physical destinations, old school, without using these gates, was such a fun convention. And I think that we see in this volume, again, how limiting that could be for Kate Pryde, and how much that gets her into trouble, or how much she really wants to change that. There's definitely conversations she has with Forge and other characters in this volume, trying to fix that and remedy it for the future. But I did like that convention that they established all the way in volume 1. We still see that recurring through the rest of this run here, and I like that. I like that they set it up, and I like that this whole run, she is, for all intents and purposes, limited by her inability to phase through and to go through this portal. I like as well the further relationship building between Kate Pryde and Emma Frost. They've always had kind of a contentious relationship, and I think that as it's become more of a friendship in recent years and decades, it is cool to just see them become kind of allies and confidants and friends. I do think it was interesting to see their power play and all the things that shift and change up with them and Sebastian Shaw. This collection basically began with them trying to maim him and hurt him for everything that he did to try to plot to kill Kate Pryde, to at the end there's a kind of uneasy alliance or understanding, and he's sort of a functional business partner in many ways. How they all kind of navigate that together and live within that tension and make their own dealings or agreements of what can stand and what can't. Well, frankly, it's one of the aspects of this book that makes it such a fun read. At any rate, as you saw there, we got some cover art and some other sketches and other bonus materials rounding out the collection, and that's really it for Marauders Volume 2. And now, before we get to the grade, I just wanted to do some side-by-sides with the Volume 1 so you could see what this might look like on your bookcase. So here's our look at the Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Marauders. I'm just giving you a look at their front covers next to each other before showing you the spines, which is again probably your view from the bookcase. I love that the formatting is all the same, the coloring is all the same. It is a really great little matching set here. Really excited to see that. And now let's go ahead and get to that grade. Okay, for the next part of our seafaring X-Men title, Marauders, for its gorgeous art, fun storylines, particularly those found in Madripoor, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Marauders Hardcover Volume 2 by Gerry Duggan a B. I think overall this was a successful sequel volume to the first hardcover. I do think that this wrapped up this run at least satisfactory. I think that it was a little bit flat overall, but we got a logical turning of the page that I was overall content with. Kate Pryde is once again great as Captain, but I think that in this volume we saw her maybe overshadowed by some other secondary characters from this crew, like Iceman or Callisto or Storm, to name a few. This is not a must-read from me for this Krakoa era, but definitely one I would still recommend for fans of these characters or this general concept. But let me know what you think of Marauders, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave that like and comment. Have a good one.